Hello, and welcome to Class Time, your daily classroom for CSEC students. Watch this lesson in real time on Television Jamaica's YouTube channel or One Spot Media. In today's English lesson, we'll be focusing on persuasive writing, and we're looking specifically at letters to the editor. I'm Vanessa Francis. So, as we said, we're looking at letters to the editor, and there are many things we need to understand in writing a letter to the editor. So, of course, our objectives for today. So, by the end of this lesson, you should be able to explain the functions of a letter to the editor. You should be able to discuss various elements which comprise letters to the editor, as well as analyze samples of letters to the editor. All right? So, the first and most important thing, what is a letter to the editor? Now, think carefully. You have to understand who an editor is. Someone who edits. So this is somebody at the newspaper who is more or less responsible for giving the final say in what gets printed. So you're writing to this person specifically, and you're writing in order to share something. So these are the things you need to look at. So if you want to express a strong emotion regarding an issue, so think of something you feel passionately about, something that stirs your blood, something that makes you upset, or something that makes you sad, or something that it just matters a lot to you. Now, this is something you could write to the editor about. The next reason you could write is to influence the general populace or officials to take action regarding an issue. So again, think of something that you would like to see changed, something that you would like for people to care about, and that is something you could write to your editor about in order to let people be aware of this thing that is going on in your life. And the next thing you could write to do is to stimulate the news media to highlight a particular issue. So I'm sure many of you watch the news and you have those little segments where something is highlighted, like a ray of hope or something along those lines. So you have an issue that you need to have highlighted. You want the media to take it and run with it. So you can write to your editor in order to get that kind of exposure for your issue. Now that we know what you can write about, we need to know how you write it. So what are the things that you should have in your letter? So the first thing, the format of the letter. Now the format is going to take the format of a formal or business letter. And we looked at this in an earlier lesson, but let's just recap. So tell me now, what's the first thing that must be on the page? First thing must be the sender's address, correct. After the sender's address, what's next? The receiver's particulars. After the receiver's particulars, what's next? The salutation, very good. After the salutation, what comes next? The subject line, which is very important because this is what tells the editor what you are writing about. And then after the subject line, what comes next? The body, of course. This is where you develop your ideas. And then when you're finished with developing your ideas, what comes next? The closure. And as the name suggests, you're closing the letter is finished at this point. So now we look at the content of your letter. So you know what format it should take. Now we need to look at the content, what should be in it. So when you're opening the letter now, it is best to keep your salutation simple and direct, but still be courteous. So generally you'll see something like, good day, or the editor, or just dear editor, something simple like that. So you don't want to be too long-winded in the salutation because the salutation is just a greeting. So your greeting must be very short and precise. No. After you have greeted, you need to ensure that you grab the reader's attention. Because remember now, you are writing persuasively. In the exam especially, you need to ensure that you start with a bang. So your reader from your very first few lines must be engaged in the reading. For everything you do on your paper too, your aim is to engage your reader. So you want to make sure that your opening sentence is impactful. It packs a punch. It just grabs us and holds us and does not let us go. So once we read that first sentence, we have to keep reading. We want to keep reading. Of course, there are different ways you can do this. So you can open up with an unusual fact, or you can open up with a statistic. So either of these can work. You can also open up with a question or even a quotation, or just make a really emphatic statement. Can you believe it? Something that is going to actually pull us in, something that is going to give us something to want to read along for. So you can use any of these examples here in your writing, and it's best if you practice and vary how you start your letters. So today, try an unusual fact. Tomorrow, try a statistic. Another time, you try the emphatic statement. Try to vary how you begin and get enough practice with each way. So that way, when you get to the exam, you are versed in many different styles. Now, you have greeted, you have grabbed our attention. Now to maintain the attention. So you're going to give the purpose of the letter in the opening paragraph, because of course the editor needs to know why you have written this letter. And you're not necessarily going to say, my purpose for writing this letter is. That is very stock. That is very old-fashioned. You don't have to use those words for us to determine what your purpose is. Just dive right into the purpose. So you don't want to keep your reader in suspense. This is not a mystery novel. It is a direct and factual piece of writing. So you want to ensure that it is clear what your purpose for writing is, and you want to make that very clear very early. Now, here is where you need to work, because you need to ensure you put in a thesis statement. That thesis statement basically is a summary of what the whole letter will be about. So it's that statement that gives your reader the idea of what it is you plan to discuss, what it is you plan to develop as you write. So you need to have a thesis statement in your opening paragraph that lets us know, okay, this is where he or she is going with this letter. Now, of course, if you have chosen to write about this, it must be something that matters to you. So you want to make sure very early on in your introductory paragraph that you establish why the issue is important. Why is it important to you? And by letting us know why it's important to you, then you're also letting us know why it is important to us as well. So never assume that your issue, even though it is very important in your estimation, is important to everyone. So even if it's what you would consider a popular issue, you still need to ensure that you bring that message home. You still need to ensure that you persuade us that it is important, because it just might be that although you believe it is important to everyone, it happens to only be important to you and a very small group of people. So no matter what you think about the issue, ensure that you pull together everything that you can to make it important to anyone who reads your work. And of course, you're going to do this by utilizing various persuasive techniques. And you're going to use these techniques to win support for your cause. We're going to look at those in another lesson, so get ready for those. You can start preparing from now for that. Now, of course, if you're going to praise or criticize something, because remember, it's important to you, you have to make sure you give evidence. So if you're praising an issue, why are you praising it? What is good about it? Tell us. Let us understand what is good about it. If you're going to criticize something, same thing. Tell us. Why are you criticizing? What is important? what are the reasons behind you feeling that this issue must be criticized in some way, shape, or form? So now, you're going to outline your opinion of what should be done. Although you are possibly writing this letter to unload an emotional burden, you're writing to vent about an issue, you're writing to let people know that you're tired of it, you still need to ensure that you include as many suggestions for improving as possible. Who wants to just hear complaint on top of complaint on top of complaint? Why are you just complaining? So make sure you can put forward some suggestions on how to improve matters. So you want to highlight what is wrong, but you also want to suggest how it can be fixed. And you end up with a much more positive outlook in the end. That word again, be concise. So you want to ensure that when you're writing the letter, you don't stray too far from the main point. Make a point, support the point, move on to another point. Do not ramble on and on and on, and then what you end up doing is losing traction and losing interest as well. So if you go on too much, then what's going to happen? The argument loses its potency. And naturally, you have done all this work leading up to your final paragraph. So you need to ensure that you finish on a strong note. So your argument shouldn't just fizzle out like it got burnt out, you run out of fuel. No, you want to finish it as strongly as you started, or even stronger too, because you want to leave that lingering impression. So the last paragraph on your paper should leave a strong impression on whoever reads it. So you want to do this by summarizing the most important points. So whatever important points you made, you want to remind us that these are the things that you said. And of course, this will help to encourage whoever's reading now to make sure that, you know, he or she is right. Maybe we should do this, or maybe we should do that instead of what we have been doing all this time. So here are some ways you can close. So you can make a dramatic plea. I beg of you to see that this is an injustice. So you're appealing to emotions that way. And notice it says dramatic. So you're not just going to say, please join me in this fight. That's not dramatic. Come now, you can do better than that. You can make a prediction. And this prediction now is going to imply how urgent the situation is and how urgently it needs to be addressed. So you can say, if things continue as they are, then, and you tell us the downfall, the downside, if we don't do something now to change things. You can also use a question to provoke your reader's thoughts. So you can ask us, is this really how you want to continue living your life? And then, of course, we have to start thinking, is this really how we want to continue living life, or do we want to make a change? So you can come up with a very serious question, a very thought-provoking question, something that will cause your reader to have to really dig deep inside and look at themselves and say, maybe I really do need to change after all. Notice, you want a thought-provoking question, not just a little namby-pamby question that anybody could ask. And of course, another way you could end it is to give recommendations. Again, you have highlighted some problems, so you can give some suggestions as to how it can be overcome. So you want to make sure that you leave the reader on a positive note. So it's not just doom and gloom. You're showing the little ray of sunshine at the end of the tunnel. Now we're going to look at some samples because, of course, if you're going to write, it's good to know what to look for. So when looking at the samples, this is what I expect you to do. So you want to make sure that you're analyzing them, and you're analyzing them based on these criteria. So you're looking at the introduction, and under the introduction, you're analyzing the grabber or the hook. And as the name suggests, it's that that sentence at the beginning that reels you in, holds you. So you want to make sure that, is it impactful? Is it unusual? Is it a statistic? Then the introductory paragraph now. When you get to that, you want to know, is a purpose declared? Was a thesis given? And then, still on that, you're looking at if the importance of the issue was established. So did this writer tell you what was important about this issue? Now for the body. So you want to look for evidence of praise or criticism, and you might find evidence of both depending. So now you want to know, how was it substantiated? So if they said something good, what proof did they put forward? If they said something bad, what proof did they put forward? Now, did they outline any solutions? Because remember, you don't want to just outline problem. You want to see that they make some suggestions as well. Some solutions have to be put forward. So, were any put forward? And of course, you're looking at conciseness. Were they precise in what they said? Did they ramble? Did they go off on any tangents that were unrelated? Or did they stay on point? And of course, you have to look at the conclusion, because remember we said, the conclusion is also important. After you do all that building up, you don't want to just drop us flat. So now, is the most important evidence summarized? So did they give you a summation of the main points that they made? And what kind of closing sentence did they use? And we looked at them already. So the last sentence, what did they say? What did they use? All right, so this is our first one, and it is Sensitizing Jamaicans to the Vaccine is Critical. That's the title of it, and it was written by Adrian Gentles, and it was in The Gleaner of February 13, 2021. Very recent. So here we go. Remember now, you're listening for all those areas that I gave you. So, the editor, Madame, the Ministry of Health and Wellness has embarked on a multi-million-dollar COVID-19 vaccine sensitization project. The public is curious to know if this project is necessary or if the cost is justifiable. Ensuring that the vaccine reaches everyone is a solution, but it does present some problems. We would be hard-pressed to believe that sourcing the vaccine in a competitive market would be the most challenging aspect on the road to vaccination. However, the most challenging will be to keep the vaccines in the required temperature until it is administered to the population. If we look at parts of the United States of America, misinformation about the vaccine runs rampant and uncontrolled. The sensitization is important because most of Jamaica is not educated on the vaccine. There is a part of the population who will be most vulnerable to misinformation by the now famous WhatsApp aunties who send every conspiracy-laden chain message in the family groups. Another concern is that some crafty people may use this opportunity to trick, defraud, and take advantage of persons who may be unaware of the vaccine plan, and find some way to create confusion. It is important that we are not penny-wise and pound-foolish. COVID-19 is destroying livelihoods and putting the entire economy under stress. The government needs to ensure that the money is being spent for sensitization is used effectively. A positive reception to the vaccine is key to the quick recovery of the economy. Whereas, if we allow disinformation to trump the campaign, we may never get an opportunity to catch up with the facts. My advice to the Ministry of Health is to run the sensitization campaign, but ensure we get value for money. Keep detailed documentation for the scrutiny that is sure to come and lead us to a better new normal. We can see that a massive sensitization campaign is needed, not only to educate Jamaicans, but also to convince Jamaicans that the vaccine is safe and effective. Now let that sink in And when we come back from this quick break, we will look at it in more details, all right? So we're going to a quick break and we'll be back with more English. Welcome back to Class Time, your daily classroom for CSEC subjects. If you're just joining us, we are looking at persuasive writing, specifically letters to the editor. All right, so before the break, we read a sample of a letter. So now we're going to analyze this letter based on the criteria that we had looked at before. So the first thing we're going to look at now, the introduction of this letter. Now, look at the grabber or the hook, and you'll notice that it had an unusual fact or a statistic. It started with, the Ministry of Health and Wellness has embarked on a multi-million-dollar COVID-19 vaccine sensitization project. So the whole idea is they started giving us some figures, something to hold us, something to give us some food for thought. Because once you see that multi-million-dollar signs start going off in your head, it's very expensive. And then what is costing this multi-million dollars? The vaccine project, sensitization project, sorry. So now we have to look at the introductory paragraph, the paragraph that opened up the argument to us. Now, was the purpose declared? Wasn't really declared. They didn't outrightly say what the purpose was. But from reading the paragraph, it was implied. So we knew that this letter is going to focus on discussing how feasible this project is and how feasible the money being spent on it is. And then we did get a thesis statement. So we did get a statement that more or less guided us into what the whole thing would be about. And that statement was, ensuring that the vaccine reaches everyone is the solution. But it does present some problems. So right then we know that he's going to talk about the fact that the vaccine and getting the vaccine and information about it to everyone is a solution. However, he foresees certain issues, certain problems in happening. Again, with the introductory paragraph, Look at the fact that was there an established importance of the issue? Did your writer make the issue seem important? Somewhat. Didn't come out strongly as we would like, but he did make us know that it is an important issue. And how he did this? Look at this sentence. The public is curious to know if this project is necessary or if the cost is justifiable. So that sentence gives us an inkling of an idea that yes, this is an issue that should be important because notice, it costs money. Money is important to all of us, is it not? And it affects the general public. So it's important to the public, and it's also important because it's going to cost money. Now we have to analyze the body of the essay. Now, remember, you're looking for evidence of praise or criticism. So was there praise? Was there criticism? And if so, where? And we see now that the writer placed emphasis on the need for sensitization. So right there, he was criticizing the whole idea that people need to know. People need to understand what this thing is about. And remember when he mentioned the whole idea of the WhatsApp aunties, so that is a criticism right there. So did he outline solutions now? Look at this statement. So he says, run the sensitization campaign, but ensure we get value for money. So he's saying, yes, we need this campaign, but ensure that the campaign is done in a feasible manner. The campaign is done in a cost-effective manner. We want bang for our buck. So he says, keep detailed documentation for the scrutiny that is sure to come. So that is a solution there. The money is going to be spent, but ensure that you document it because somebody is going to ask, where did the money go? And you need to be able to show that it went here, and it went here. So keep detailed documentation. And of course, this will help us in navigating this new normal. That phrase has become the catchphrase of this part of the century, the new normal. Now, still under the body, was the writer concise? Was the writer staying on point? Did the writer stray? Did the writer introduce anything that was irrelevant, or did the writer tie everything together nicely? So you did notice, or you should have noticed, that the writer remained focused on the need for the campaign. So at every point, the writer reminded you why the campaign was necessary. And the writer avoided veering off on any unrelated tangents. So the writer did not bring in any information that did not have any bearing on what he wanted to talk about. Now, our conclusion. Remember, start well, maintain, finish well. So, was the most important evidence summarized? Can you remember if that happened? So the author did in fact reiterate the need for sensitization. So in the concluding paragraph, he did remind us that this is something that we need to do. It's necessary. We can't overlook it. And then remember what type of sentence was used at the end? So the sentence was, we can see that a massive sensitization campaign is needed, not only to educate Jamaicans, but also to convince Jamaicans that the vaccine is safe and effective. So right there, he has made a prediction saying why this is necessary and the idea that, yes, we need to take urgent action because of this reason. So we see that our writer managed to hold our interest in the beginning, maintain that interest throughout, and left us feeling positive, left us feeling that, yes, this is something that we should support, and this is something that can happen if we pull together and do it. So let's look at our second piece. And this one is titled Whitewash or Blackwash. It was a good sweep. And this one was written by Kemar Bogle, and it was from The Observer, February 15, 2021. And all of these are online, by the way, so you can find them yourselves as well. Dear editor, we are the champions, my friends, and we'll keep on fighting till the end. We are the champions. We are the champions. No time for losers, because we are the champions of the world. All of that was in quotation marks. There's no victory as sweet as a West Indies victory, and their irregular occurrence makes them even more joyous. It was another stellar performance from the Caribbean men to win the second test, proving their victory in the first test was no fluke. A 2-0 victory over host Bangladesh is no mean feat. And as West Indies supporters, we are overflowing with an abundance of joy in this blackwash. It is a tour that started poorly and saddled expected disappointment. It has ended in an unexpected series sweep. Too many occasions we've heard about the positive takeaways after a series loss, but this time around we can delight in the effort displayed across both test matches by the team. There's no greater example of making best use of opportunities received than we've seen in this series. And while a few players who have fallen short of their own individual targets, being a part of this victory will certainly numb the pain of their own individual disappointment. There are a few players watching on who'll be wondering if they've lost their spot as a test player. The likes of Shimron Hetmyer, Darren Bravo, Ruston Chase, Shamar Brooks, and Shane Dorwich, all or most will certainly now have to sit out until the incumbents begin to underperform. After all, none of these players have proven themselves as definite starters. So, bench warmers they'll have to be until such time. Craig Brathwaite's leadership deserves much credit. He showed positive intent while batting, which is rare, and his attacking mindset in the field was most refreshing to behold. It's something that has been lacking from the regular captain, Jason Holder. And while his captaincy or place on the team isn't under immediate threat, he'll be the wiser for it to take note of Brathwaite's leadership on the field. As we break down and rejoice over this series victory, we look optimistically ahead. Sri Lanka is expected to tour the West Indies in a few weeks. Talks of turning the corner haven't begun circulating as yet, but be sure that it will be difficult to temper expectations entering this series, and it will be interesting to see if there is continued growth or relapse. Speaking of relapse, the West Indies Cricket Board, WICB, or Cricket West Indies, CWI, has historically contributed to the relapse. Oftentimes, strides forward have been derailed by the actions of the board. John Dyson and Richard Pabos were coaches that were relieved of duty after taking the team in the right direction. Immediately after their dismissal, relapse occurred. Current coach Phil Simmons suffered a similar fate in his first coaching stint. Let's hope the CWI has realized the folly of its ways and not make a similar mistake to that of the past. So, we're going to look at this again under the same headings from start to finish. So, of course, our introduction. What did you see going on in the introduction? So, we had a grabber or a hook, and it was an impactful statement. Now, the reason why we say it was an impactful statement, your writer quoted lines from what is normally a well-known song. Now, in thinking about it, there are other songs he might have been able to choose that would possibly have more impact on the present day reader. So a younger reader might not know that song because it was a song written in, I think, the 80s that it came out. But there are many movies that use the song in their soundtracks. So it's familiar. It's something that when you hear it, you kind of, oh, yes, I remember that. And if you think about it, it ties in with what he's saying. Now, the introductory paragraph, we need to look at that closely. So, the purpose, was it declared? In this case, again, it wasn't outrightly stated, it was more of an implication. So, in reading the paragraph, you derived what the purpose was. So, you understood from reading it that the author plans to discuss the performance of the West Indies cricket team while on tour in Bangladesh. And is there a thesis? No distinct thesis. So there was not a one sentence that captured everything. So the whole paragraph actually kind of gave you the idea of what was coming instead of a single sentence standing out to do that. Now, did he establish the importance of the issue? Again, somewhat. And how does he do this? So the author uses this statement: there's no victory as sweet as a West Indies victory, and their irregular occurrence makes them even more joyous. So right there we understand that West Indians love their cricket, and of course they love when their team wins. But notice he throws a little shade. Notice the shade that is thrown, and he says their irregular occurrence. So unfortunately he is showing West Indians love when the cricket team wins. However, the cricket team doesn't win as often as the West Indians would like. So when the team does do well and when the team does win, the win is highlighted more, the win is loved more, the win is enjoyed more. So right there, he does several things in one sentence. So, is there evidence of praise and or criticism? And how is this praise and or criticism substantiated in the writing? So he describes the team's performance in the series. So that's one thing that he does. The next thing that he does, he praises the captain's performance and the leadership. And the next thing that he does, he criticizes the West Indies Cricket Board for past failures directly following coaching decisions that they have made. So in this case, he does not only praise, he does not only criticize. He gives praise where praise is worthy, and he also offers criticism where he finds it necessary. So do not feel that you have to only praise or only criticize. You can do both, but make sure you balance it properly and you bring it across properly so it's not confusing. So he outlines a solution, correct? Yes, he does. But he doesn't do it explicitly again. In criticizing the cricket board for how they go about choosing coaches, that's how he offers the solution. Because the criticism is saying that they need to be more careful with what they're doing. So the solution there is that they should pay close attention to how they go about selecting their different coaches and so on. Was it concise? It was longer than the other letter, yes, but was it just as concise? Did he remain on point? And you see that for each sentence, for each paragraph, what he does, he focuses on what contributes to the team's win. So he tells you exactly what he believes factored into the win. And he also tells you what it was that factored into their previous losses. The conclusion now. So, was the most important evidence summarized? Did he give you a little synopsis of what he had said before? Well, in this conclusion, he didn't summarize what went before. What he did, though, he gave us new evidence. So he introduced something new when he brings in the assessment of the cricket board. Now, this is something we really wouldn't want you to be doing in an exam situation, because your conclusion is not for making a new point. So if you find that you missed out a point, you still need to write a conclusion after you have made that point. So if you have the time to include another point, all right, fine, include your other point, but you still need to have an actual concluding paragraph that more or less reminds us of what you did already, not spring something new on us. And then look at the type of closing sentence that he uses in it. So let's all hope the CWI has realized the folly of its ways and not make a similar mistake to that of the past. So he makes a specific recommendation here. He tells them, we're hoping you understand what you did wrong in the past. You understand what you need to do in order to make the future better. So he's making a recommendation to them this time around. All right, so our next one is seek answers to the crime problem from criminals. Interesting. You're going to go to the criminals to get the answers to crime. All right, let's see how that works out. So this is by Earl Mackenzie, and it was in the Gleaner on February 16. The editor, Madam, I think the explanation for Jamaica's horrendous crime problem is to be found in the minds and hearts of the persons who committed the crimes and who are now in the island's prisons. Academics, politicians, and civil society should, by studying the thought processes of prisoners, look to them for the answers to their questions. This will be a more reliable source of information than the ruminations of columnists and sages. After the expectations are better understood, there will be firmer basis for remedial actions. A study of the religious beliefs of prisoners done in the United States found that most of them said that they believe in God, and only a tiny number self-identified as agnostics and atheists. I wonder what a similar study done in Jamaica would discover. Their ethical beliefs are more important than their religious ones, for the two are not the same, as many erroneously believe. Ethical beliefs, which all persons have, whether they are religious or not, are sources from which most human actions spring. So, there is a need to study the ethical beliefs of prisoners. Centuries of brutalizing prisoners have shown that this method does not work. Those countries that stress rehabilitation rather than retribution have had more success and less crime. As soon as a convicted person enters those prisons, he or she is given an educational evaluation, and an individual plan for this person's freedom through education and training is drawn up and followed. The prisoner is also required to work, earn, and save so as to have money to begin a new life when released. Persons who leave these prisons seldom return. I think that the education of prisoners should be one of the cornerstones of the nation's educational philosophy. Turn the prisoners into students. Turn the prisons into school, training institutes, and colleges. Education can be a way of turning bondage into greater freedom for the prisoners and the society. So, we're going for our final break. So think about that until we come back and we wrap things up. Welcome back. So before the break, we looked at another piece from a letter to the editor. Now we're going to break it down and see all the moving parts involved. So the introduction. So the grabber or the hook. I think the explanation for Jamaica's horrendous crime problem is to be found in the island's prisons. Now, this is an impactful statement, but can you see why? Look at the strong wording used in this statement. So right here, our writer already sets up a situation where we are in shock because you have to say, oh my God, horrendous crime problem, mercy. And we have to read now to see what else he's going to say about it. Now let's look at the introductory paragraph. So the purpose, was it declared? Again, somewhat declared. Because we see in the opening sentence that he plans to talk about the crime problem and how he feels we can solve that crime problem. And then, did he give a thesis? In a way. So it wasn't a clear thesis, but we do have a sentence that gives us an idea of what is to come. And that sentence is, academics, politicians, and civil society should, by studying the thought processes of prisoners, look to them for answers to their questions. So right there, he's already telling us that, yes, if we want to know how to solve crime, talk to the criminals. And then, does he establish why this issue is important? He does somewhat do that. So it doesn't explicitly state why it's important, but once we're reading, we can figure out, we can gather the information that, yes, this is an important issue. And look at the statements that he makes that lead us to that conclusion. This will be a more reliable source of information than the ruminations of columnists and sages. So basically, talking to the actual prisoners is going to be more effective than talking to people who write about prisoners who are not themselves prisoners. And then he continues, after the explanations are better understood, there will be a firmer basis for remedial actions. So understanding why someone commits a crime from a person who has committed a crime will lead you to be able to understand how to prevent it in the future or how to prevent this person from committing another crime if they get the chance to do so. Now the body. So we have evidence of praise or criticism. Look at what happens in there. So the author criticizes the prison system in Jamaica, and he does this by comparing it to that of other countries. Notice he brought up the whole idea of the United States and what happens in other countries, what obtains in other prison systems as opposed to ours. And he asserts now that inmates there in these other countries are rehabilitated during the period of incarceration, whereas he's implying and sometimes openly stating that the prisoners here are not rehabilitated. You just hold them for a time, send them back out, and send them back out to do what? Possibly commit another crime. So, does he outline a solution? Yes, he does. And he does this by focusing on how convicted criminals can be rehabilitated. And he says that if we study these criminals, then we'll better understand them and we'll understand how to rehabilitate them. And he also brings in the idea that they can be rehabilitated through education and training. He did bring up the whole idea that if we teach them, if we let them earn some money, then perhaps they won't go out and steal the money instead, we hope. And was he concise? Really? Think about it. Did he at any point go off tangent? Did he bring in a lot of irrelevant information, a lot of irrelevant details? No, he really didn't. So he does not veer because he shows throughout the writing that studying those who are incarcerated, studying those who are already imprisoned is a good way for them to understand how this works, and for us regular citizens to help them as well, and for the whole country in turn to benefit. So let's look at the conclusion now. So in the concluding paragraph, if you remember, did he bring up any new evidence, or did he just bring up what he had said already, reminded us of some things that he pointed out? So what he did in that was to reiterate the importance of educating them. Notice he used the words. Notice he says that we should turn the prisoners into students. We should turn the prisons into schools and training institutes and colleges. So he reaffirms the whole idea that if you want to make criminals not criminals anymore, we need to train them. We need to teach them a better way. And then we look at the closing sentence that he uses. Education can be a way of turning bondage into greater freedom for the prisoners and the society. So again, he also makes a specific recommendation. He gives us something that he believes can help. So he doesn't question, he didn't plead, he just gave a recommendation, which is something that you can do as well in your writing. You can make recommendations because by the time you get to this point, you should have some clear ideas of what can be done to help, what can be done to change. So whatever the issue is that you had, you can say, this can be done. So here is your homework. So you can say, you can visit the Gleaner and any other newspaper websites and read actual copies of anything at all, any other type of letter to the editor. They're there online, you can research them. And when you read them, you're reading with these things in mind. You're looking at how they open. You're looking at how they sustain interest, how they build on what they have to say, how they bring a point across. Do they do it very strongly? Do they not so strong, but it could improve? So you're going to critically analyze the writing, because if you learn to critically analyze other people's writing, then of course you'll be better able to critically analyze your own writing when the time comes. So you're going to look for various letters to the editor, and you're going to look at how they start. You're going to look at how they develop the points. Are they seamless? Are they logical? Are they sequenced properly? And you're also going to look at how they finish. Did they finish on a strong note, or did it just kind of weaken out and veer off into the sunset? So you don't want to have that happen. So that's part A of your homework. Read and analyze another piece of writing. Then what you should do now, after being so prepared to understand how to write, you now need to compose one for yourself. So what you can do, you can pick one and respond to it. So you can read one and say, I agree or I disagree, and write down your reasons and create your own response and send it into the newspaper as well. Who knows, they might very well like it and print it. If they don't, at least you still get some writing practice. Isn't that so? All right, so that's all for today. Class time will break for midterm and will resume on Monday, February 22 at 9 a.m. Until then, keep safe.
Hi there, I'm Simon Preston from TVJ. Thank you very much for watching our YouTube channel. To see our latest videos and also to see live events, click here. To see our full videos on onespotmedia.com, click here. Thank you very much for watching.